Welcome to the deep dive. We are taking on a pretty challenging set of source material today. It's a global report, and it's really unsparing in its assessment of elder financial exploitation.
Yeah, the authors don't pull any punches.
No, they really don't. They call this much more than just, financial crime. They frame it as an escalating crisis, even an unconscionable assault on human dignity.
That phrase really hits hard.
It does. Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission today isn't just to look at the staggering amount of money lost.
That's bad enough.
Absolutely, but we want to understand the sort of profound societal failure that allows this kind of crime to flourish. We're really talking about security, participation, dignity, things owed to the most experienced people in our communities.
And what's fascinating, I think, is how the source immediately shifts the focus. It's not just random theft.
Right.
They frame these scams, these tech-enabled scams, as a symptom of something deeper, a deeper cultural pathology.
Yeah, pathology, a strong word.
It is. And they see it as dynamic, escalating, almost an arms race, where these, often transnational criminals have a big advantage. It's not just some static problem we can manage.
Okay, so that's why we need to dig in deep today. We'll start with the numbers, the sort of unsparing calculus of the financial losses. Then we'll look at how technology is, not just enabling, but really accelerating the deception.
The tech angle is crucial.
Definitely. And finally, we'll dive into the devastating, often invisible human cost and that part. That might be the most shocking part of all.
Agreed.
So let's start with the scale. The financial data just from the U.S., it paints a really concerning picture. Adults 60 and older reported losing, get this, $4.9 billion to fraud in 2024.
$4.9 billion.
And what's truly alarming about that figure isn't just the size, but the speed, the acceleration.
How much of an increase was it?
That $4.9 billion, it represents a massive 43% increase in just 1 year. Now, overall fraud for all ages is growing too, sure. But that rate for older adults, it really shows a kind of ruthless efficiency by the criminals targeting them.
And that efficiency, it translates directly into disproportionate losses, doesn't it?
Exactly. Explain that.
Well, younger adults might actually report losing money more often, statistically. But when an older adult becomes a victim, the amount lost is significantly higher.
How much higher?
In 2024, the average loss for an older victim was, it was life-altering, $83,000.
$83,000 average.
Average. Now contrast that with the overall average loss across all age groups, which is around $19,000.
So more than 4 times higher for older victims.
More than 4 times. And you have to understand what that means. For many seniors, this isn't just, a financial hit. It often means the near total annihilation of a person's retirement security.
Annihilation.
Yeah, it completely erases the nest egg they save for care, for dignity in their later years, and there's often very little chance to earn that back.
Okay, so $4.9 billion is the official number, the reported loss. But you mentioned earlier that's not the whole story.
Not even close. That reported figure is widely considered just the tip of the iceberg. More comprehensive studies, they estimate the true cost to the U.S. economy could be as high as $28.3 billion annually.
$28 billion. So where's that massive gap coming from? Why the difference?
It's largely non-reporting. Victims are often silenced. There's intense shame, embarrassment, and a deep fear of being seen as, cognitively incompetent, losing their independence.
Which ironically just keeps them isolated.
Exactly. It serves the criminal's agenda perfectly. That shame actively facilitates the crime continuing. It's terrible.
Just terrible. Okay, let's pivot now to the methods. Because the sources are clear, this isn't simple trickery. They call it complex forms of psychological warfare.
That's a good description.
So what are the most financially damaging scams right now?
Well, investment scams topped the list for older adults in 2024. They accounted for over $1.83 billion in losses. And a key tactic here is something called the pig butchering scheme. You might have heard of it.
Explain that one. It sounds insidious.
It is. It's sort of a hybrid. It blends romance scams with investment fraud. And it relies heavily on what the report calls financial grooming.
Financial grooming?
Yes.
Like psychological grooming?
Precisely. It's a protracted process. These criminals spend weeks, sometimes months, building intense emotional dependency and trust.
Weeks or months?
Yeah. They systematically dismantle the victim's defenses, get them emotionally invested, before they even start talking about the fake investment or extracting money. It exploits a very basic human need for connection.
Wow. And technology is playing a huge role here too, right? Accelerating things.
Absolutely. Technology is driving both the speed and the severity. Take cryptocurrency.
Okay.
Older Americans reported over $2.8 billion in losses tied just to crypto scams in 2024.
Why crypto specifically?
Because it gives criminals what they need: speed and anonymity. It allows for quick, often untraceable movement of funds across borders. Recovery becomes nearly impossible.
And then there's the next frontier, the thing that's making these personal scams just terrifyingly effective. Artificial intelligence. How are deepfakes changing the game?
Oh, AI. Yeah, this is deeply concerning. AI-powered voice cloning, deepfake videos. They're making classic impersonation scams incredibly convincing.
Like the grandparent scam.
Exactly like the grandparent scam, where a fraudster calls, pretending to be a grandchild in trouble, needing money wired immediately.
Uh-huh.
Now imagine that call, but the voice isn't just similar. It sounds identical to their actual grandchild's voice, cloned using AI from maybe a social media clip, or a short video call where the face looks right.
Oh, that's chilling. How could you possibly detect that in a moment of panic?
It's nearly impossible for a loving family member. It weaponizes their most trusted relationships and their immediate distress response against them.
Which brings us right back to the source of the vulnerability, doesn't it? What the report calls the digital dragnet.
The digital dragnet, yes.
The success of these highly personalized scams, it's not accidental. Criminals aren't just guessing who to call or what story to use.
No, they're working with data.
Right. The report states that 72% of elder-targeted cybercrimes in 2024 were enabled by the online availability of personal data. 72%. Fueling over $4 billion in losses just from that factor.
So they know things.
They know everything. They don't start with a cold call. They use data brokers, those, ubiquitous people search websites,
Right.
to basically create these incredibly detailed dossiers on potential targets,
Yeah.
often for just a nominal fee. They can find family names, addresses, maybe even hints about financial status.
So they tailor the scam perfectly.
Exactly. It makes the approach incredibly convincing.
So what does this all mean for prevention then, if the data is already out there?
Well, it means focusing only on that final scammer-victim interaction is, frankly, too little, too late. It only addresses the final stage.
The fundamental issue, the report argues, is the unchecked proliferation and commercialization of our sensitive personal data. That's what fuels this whole predatory economy. The crime really starts when that data is aggregated and sold in the broker's marketplace.
That's a powerful indictment of the whole data economy, really.
Wow. Okay, let's shift now. Let's transition to the consequences that, well, truly go beyond the money. The report stresses that these financial metrics we've been talking about, they fail to capture the profound and lasting human cost.
And this is where it gets incredibly serious, beyond the financial loss. This kind of exploitation is a form of deep psychological abuse.
How does that manifest?
The research is consistent. Clinical studies show victims suffer significantly higher rates of depression, anxiety, and even post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD.
PTSD from a financial scam.
Absolutely. Think about the violation of trust, the self-blame. Victims experience intense feelings of shame, anger, and it often leads to social withdrawal, isolation.
Which we already know makes them more vulnerable. Exactly.
Yeah.
But the critical connection, the one that's often overlooked, is physical. This acute psychological distress, it manifests in the body.
How so?
The stress of victimization is directly linked in studies to chronic sleep problems, poor overall health outcomes, increased rates of hospitalization,
Okay.
and, most alarmingly, a statistically significant increase in mortality.
Wait, mortality? You mean people are actually dying because of this?
Yes. The stress, the
Mhm.
loss of resources for care, the despair, it can contribute to premature death.
That completely reframes the issue, doesn't it?
It has to.
If a crime can lead directly to death, it's not just a financial crime anymore. It's a life-threatening public health crisis.
Precisely. It demands that level of seriousness in response. And this leads us to something the report calls the cognitive paradox.
Okay, the cognitive paradox. What's that?
Well, the prevailing ageist script, right?
Yeah.
The sort of societal reaction is often that victims must be foolish or losing it cognitively to fall for these things.
Right, the victim-blaming part.
Exactly. But the research offers a vastly different and frankly much more compassionate counter-narrative.
And this counter-narrative is the real aha moment here, I think. What is this surprising link between being vulnerable financially and neurological health?
Okay, so cutting-edge research, and this is relatively new, suggests that a sudden increase in susceptibility to financial exploitation, like making uncharacteristically poor financial decisions or falling for scams they wouldn't have before this, might actually serve as an early behavioral indicator of underlying neurodegenerative diseases.
Like Alzheimer's?
Like Alzheimer's, yes. Researchers have found measurable links between this vulnerability and physiological changes in the brain, specifically a thinning of the entorhinal cortex.
And the entorhinal cortex is important because...
It's crucial for memory formation and risk assessment, and significantly, it's one of the first areas affected in the progression of Alzheimer's disease.
Wow. So falling victim isn't necessarily a sign of foolishness. It could be an early warning sign of a serious medical condition.
That's the implication. And it's massive. It means victimization shouldn't trigger judgment or scorn from family, banks, or society.
It should trigger what?
A supportive clinical response. It should be reframed as a potential public health signal that demands medical evaluation and support, not blame. This kind of paradigm shift is absolutely essential if we want to reduce the stigma that keeps people from reporting in the first place.
That changes everything about how we should approach this. Okay, let's zoom out now and connect this medical paradox to the bigger societal picture. The report argues this whole crisis is fueled by something deeper, a pervasive cultural malady, ageism.
Yes, the systemic erosion of respect for old age.
And the sources describe this destructive feedback loop, right? Explain how that works.
Well, it starts with the criminals. They weaponize ageist stereotypes, assuming older adults are perhaps easier targets, maybe more trusting or less tech-savvy.
Okay.
Then, when a scam happens, society often reinforces those same stereotypes through victim-blaming narratives. You hear it all the time.
Yeah.
How could they fall for that?
Instead of focusing on the predator.
Exactly. Instead of questioning the predatory act itself, the focus shifts to the victim's perceived failing. And when that's the common reaction, we are dangerously normalizing this false equation. Aging equals cognitive decline.
Which makes the next victim feel even more ashamed and less likely to report.
It fuels the whole cycle. And to really grasp the depth of this cultural failure, the report suggests contrasting it with cultures that still genuinely value age.
How so?
Well, our modern, sort of utilitarian Western view often ties a person's worth, maybe unconsciously, to their immediate economic productivity. This can lead to the othering of older adults once they retire.
Right.
But in many other cultures, particularly, say, indigenous communities highlighted in the report, elders aren't seen as less productive. They're revered. They're seen as repositories of philosophical and cultural wisdom, essential keepers of knowledge.
A completely different perspective on value.
Completely different. And when that respect erodes, as it has in many Western societies, the cost isn't just personal, it's strategic. The report calls it the Great Forgetting.
A great forgetting. What does that mean?
It means we, as a society, sever the transfer of what you might call deep smarts or practical wisdom. That's the kind of context-rich understanding built over decades of experience that's actually essential for navigating complex, long-term challenges.
Like what?
Like climate change, or the ethical rollout of AI, or geopolitical instability. Things that require long-term perspective, not just short-term data points.
And the scam narrative undermines the elders' credibility.
Precisely. It silences them. It undermines their standing as a source of that crucial wisdom. So we end up crippling our collective ability to solve future problems because we're dismissing the navigators with the most experience.
So if we look away from this issue, we're not just letting people lose money. We're actively discarding, as the source says, a vital navigational tool for our own future.
That's the argument. It's a profound loss.
Okay, that's heavy. Let's pivot then to solutions. What can actually be done? What measures are proving effective in building maybe a human firewall against this?
Well, first, we should acknowledge there are foundational laws in place, at least in the U.S., like the Elder Justice Act, the Senior Safe Act. But as we saw with the accelerating crime rate, these reactive tools are clearly insufficient on their own, especially against these sophisticated, often transnational criminal networks. The intervention has to be more proactive. It needs to happen at the point of risk.
So what does that look like?
That's why the focus is shifting dramatically towards proactive prevention models, often rooted in public-private alliances. And what's really fascinating here is the strong evidence supporting AARP's Bank Safe initiative.
Bank Safe, tell us about that.
It's a program that provides specialized, quite intensive training for frontline employees. We're talking bank tellers, credit union staff, even investment firm representatives. The people who actually see the potential victim when they're trying to make the transaction.
Training them to spot red flags.
Exactly. Yeah. To recognize behavioral red flags, unusual withdrawal patterns, signs of coercion or confusion, stories that just don't add up, and then how to intervene appropriately and responsibly. They become a sort of human firewall.
And does it work? Is there data?
The evidence is, frankly, remarkable. It's conclusive. BankSafe trained employees save, on average, 16 times more money from being stolen than their untrained colleagues.
16 times?
16. 1 to 6. Since it started, the initiative has prevented over $428 million in losses.
Wow.
Simply by empowering that human firewall at the crucial moment of the transaction.
That's 16 times a multiplier. That's definitive proof of concept for that model. But as you said, these crimes are often transnational. So domestic laws and programs like BankSafe, while vital, will always be playing catch-up to some extent, right?
That's the challenge.
So what framework does the report propose for a more global response?
Well, it calls for strengthening the international legal architecture. One major recommendation is pushing for a UN convention on the rights of older persons.
Similar to conventions for children or people with disabilities.
Exactly. To elevate protection standards globally, create binding obligations for signatory nations.
Makes sense. What else?
It also calls for much stronger international law enforcement cooperation, things like joint task forces, better intelligence sharing, specifically to dismantle these cross-border criminal networks that orchestrate so many of these scams.
Going after the source networks.
Yes. And critically, the recommendations go right back to that root cause we identified, the data dragnet.
Right, the commodified personal data.
So the report calls for the establishment of global standards for data privacy and much stricter regulation of data brokers, recognizing that the easy availability and sale of personal data is fundamentally what fuels this entire crisis.
Addressing the supply chain of the crime, essentially.
You could put it that way, yes.
Yeah.
The whole document really is ultimately a call to conscience. It's demanding we recognize the full scope of this financial, psychological, physical, societal, and address the cultural and systemic factors that allow it to keep escalating.
It's clear from this deep dive that fighting elder financial exploitation, it's about so much more than protecting a nest egg, isn't it?
So much more.
It's about protecting dignity, protecting health, and, as you've really highlighted, protecting our collective future wisdom.
And if listeners take away just one surprising connection from our discussion today, I hope it's that neurological link, that connection between a sudden new financial vulnerability and the possible early stages of neurodegenerative disease.
Yeah.
Because that knowledge really should fundamentally change how we, as individuals and as a society, respond to victims. It should transform that reflexive judgment or scorn into immediate compassionate support and maybe even medical concern.
That really is the core of the necessary paradigm shift, isn't it? Changing blame to support.
Absolutely.
Okay. And we'll leave you, our listeners, with this final provocative thought drawn directly from the source material. By dismissing elders as out of touch, or maybe incapable, the report argues we are actively discarding a vital navigational tool for our own future. So the question to ponder is, what wisdom, the kind derived from decades of actual human experience, not just from algorithms or technology, what wisdom are we, the younger generations, failing to acquire? What are we losing by severing that critical intergenerational knowledge pipeline? Something to think about until next time on The Deep Dive.